and calorie cycling. So this isn't going to be a discussion about why we carb or calorie cycle, but I'll go very quickly over it. The reason that we want to do this is that we want to have a total allotment for the calories and carbs we're having for the week, match our energy needs and demands for the whole week. So what people will do is they'll have higher carbs on their lifting days or higher calories on their lifting days, and then when they're having an off day from the gym and they're just doing steps, cardio, or having a rest day, they're having a lower intake of energy, so that will be lower fats and lower carbohydrates and lower overall calories because they're not expending that many that day. Why we do that is because we want to increase insulin sensitivity, increase our digestion, and increase our nutrient partitioning on the other days as well as on that day, so that we're not so bogged down, we're not lowering the amount of muscle protein synthesis we can get from the food we are eating, and our stomachs can stay a lot tighter and our digestion can be much more efficient. But what I like to take is what is called a protein-sparing modified fasting approach on my low days, because we're not expending a great deal of energy, so we don't need a whole bunch of carbohydrates or fats. We need the amount of fats we need for optimal functioning of our hormones and health. And one thing I like to do for that, so that we can focus on protein-sparing modified fasting, which means we just have protein on those days, is I like to do something called fat backloading. This is a principle that I've thought of because we can carb backload, and if carbs and fats are both forms of consumed energy that go into the bloodstream as either triglycerides or glucose, we can put fat into our system the night before and have a higher bolus of fat that night, say maybe a 60 grams fat meal before we go to bed, so that on this day we can just focus on the protein, and then maybe on this night at the very end of the protein-sparing modified fasting, which will be 24 hours after this fat backload, we can have some fats again, just so that within that 24-hour period we're meeting our fat needs so we can be healthy and have optimal digestion and hormone function. So what the idea is with protein-sparing modified fasting is we'll have every meal designed just around lean protein sources. So that'll be like your chicken breast, lean ground protein, whey protein shakes, which I actually like a lot on this day because it's going to be easier on our digestion if you have a quality whey protein. It's just a liquid. It's even lowering the digestive load. So we'll start with insulin sensitivity. The whole point of insulin sensitivity is that we don't want to be constantly putting carbohydrates and glucose in our system, so that our pancreas is constantly having to release insulin to lower the blood glucose that's in our blood. Because what happens when we eat a carbohydrate, it goes into the bloodstream as whatever kind of carbohydrates. You might have fructose, glucose, sucrose, and it turns into blood glucose. So your body will have a certain level of blood glucose sometime around eating, say maybe 20 minutes after your meal. Your blood glucose might go from 90 to 100. So now it's increased by 10. So your body's going to release insulin so that it can push that blood glucose wherever it needs to go to be stored in the body, either as muscle glycogen or fat. And we are constantly having to release that insulin to lower the blood glucose. So on this day, we're going to have less carbohydrates so that our body is not releasing insulin and it's not needing to push blood glucose down, but it will still be releasing some, and it's going to push your fasted blood glucose level down, so that on the other days we can also have a better insulin sensitivity. And what this is that if you have 200 grams of carbohydrates worth of energy that you expend in a day, but you're consuming 300 grams of carbohydrates, you now have another 100 grams of carbohydrates that might be stored as muscle glycogen or fat, because this is excess over what you're using for energy, which puts you in a positive energy balance for the day where you've got more energy consumed than expended. And this constantly will happen when we're in a growth phase, because we want to be in a calorie surplus to increase the amount of muscle protein synthesis we can achieve, the amount of energy we have in the body to burn off what we're consuming and not what we already have. So on this day, when we're not working out, we're not expending a whole bunch of energy, we can use this as a key time to increase our insulin sensitivity by consuming less carbs, which is the protein-sparing modified fasting approach. We also, on our days when we're eating excess carbs, we will have a lot of digestive demands, because now our body is saying, okay, we only needed 200 grams of carbs, but now we're eating 300. So our volume of food is increased. The demand placed on our digestive system is increased. And this can increase the amount of bloating we have, the amount of fatigue we have, the amount of inflammation we can have. So by doing this day, we are lowering the whole digestive load by decreasing the volume of food and decreasing the amount of work that our digestion has to do to push that food through the system where it needs to go. And if we are increasing our insulin sensitivity and lowering our digestive load, we can have a better nutrient partitioning. And what nutrient partitioning is it's sending protein where it needs to go, which is muscle protein synthesis. It's sending carbohydrates where they need to go, which is optimally, we want to have it as stored muscle glycogen. And it's sending fats where we need to go, which is going to be triglycerides in the blood and then stored in the muscle for energy, as well as other systems in the body so that they can function optimally. So we just want fats to go where they need to go, and we do not want them to be stored as body fat. One way that fats are stored as body fat is insulin is released in the system. Insulin is a storage hormone. So all it wants to do is tell the things that are in the blood, which will be glucose, amino acids, or triglycerides, to be stored in the body where they need to go. We don't want to have those nutrients stored as body fat. We optimally want all those nutrients to be sent to the muscles so that they can be used as energy for the muscles and be converted into muscle protein synthesis. So, protein-sparing modified fasting again, we're having the protein all day long, so our body is uptaking all of this protein, and it's either going to use it as amino acids as energy in the bloodstream, or it's going to store them in muscle cells so that we can have increased muscle protein synthesis. So what I like to think is that possibly on this day, if we're increasing our protein and we're having all of this protein being sent to muscle protein synthesis because we're having so many lower calories, that our body is actually going to increase its ability to turn protein consumed into stored muscle protein and muscle protein synthesis. And another thing we're going to have on this day is if you're only eating protein, say you have 60 grams of carbs or 60 grams of protein for every meal, and you're going to have 5 meals that day, that's going to be a total of 60 times 4, because we have 4 calories and 1 gram of protein is going to be 240 calories per meal times 5 meals. That's going to put us somewhere around 1,250 calories only from protein. So we are going to have that fat meal at the end to kind of bring this up so that we're not just totally starved throughout the day. We're going to have 5 meals this day of 60 grams of protein, because that's going to actually make us feel a little bit fuller, but we're not going to be too full because it's going to be pretty in and out of the system, and our blood sugar is going to be really low. And when our blood sugar is low, we get hungry. That's just something that we're going to have to deal with this day, but it's 1 day, maybe 2 days out of the week, 3 days if you're working out 4 days. So you just kind of got to tough it out for this day. But then when we're having the bolus of food on these other days, it kind of matches for that 1 day that we're hungry. But what's more important, being hungry 1 day or increasing nutrient partitioning, increasing our digestion so we don't have as much bloating and the feeling of low energy and feeling bogged down, and increasing our insulin sensitivity, which can make us live longer. It can increase muscle protein synthesis. It can make you feel better. It can give you better pumps in the gym. All of this goes hand in hand with all these other systems working in play. And on this day, it really gives us that day to really filter out all the unnecessary stuff and get us back into a point to where when we return to our normal diet, we can have everything working as optimal as possible.